Hello. This evening I will have a conversation with a Fiduciam type, Stephen, who originally thought he was an abstractum type, and I kind of did too. So after we discovered that he was actually a Fiduciam, I figured it would be useful to have a conversation about that, since Fiduciam with Misericordem and Corpus Secundary in their configuration can resemble abstractum. So why did you think you were an abstractum first?
That was based on the description, and I think somewhat the roles of the well-known abstractums, and their somewhat outsider status, I think, added to it, and their physical appearance.
Yeah, you said something about a persona society has given you.
Right. Yeah.
That
There's something of that.
you're very much a loner and rarely bored.
Now, so what the curious thing about the loner I can be, but I'm not bored. No, I'm very rarely bored. But so I'm not a loner in that I prefer to be alone. Really, it's in some ways I haven't found the right social circle. That's really it. We could say.
Okay, so but you had some doubt in some areas too. For example, that abstractum's imagination is not as vivid as Fiduciam.
Now you you bring it up. The that did make me wonder because I have a very vivid imagination. We could say too vivid. So some as an example, in some cases, let's say if something odd would happen, my immediate my immediate my immediate idea about what happened would be quite strange, and it would be the most dramatic possible scenario, right? And that would be the first thing I would think of. So it's quite a good an overactive imagination can be quite dangerous. Yeah.
You were saying something about when you were a kid, you thought you were in some kind of simulation.
Oh wow, yeah. That's I don't know what gave me that idea initially, but I think it was because of inconsistencies that I found that yes, I can conceive of the idea that I'm just playing a role, that it's just a simulation. And the fact that I was able to think of that made me question why would a 10 or 11-year-old have thoughts like that? So I'm not really 10 or 11. It's quite I can say honestly quite an alarming way to think that nothing is real. And I think part of it, a little part of it, may have been some quite somewhat strange experiences I had, and I had I had many night terrors, vivid dreams when I was a child, and I've the sort of dreams where I wasn't completely convinced that they were just dreams. So I don't know if that helps any.
Yeah, but you didn't identify with some of the famous fiduciams. You said they had a tendency towards emotional liability and believing almost anything.
Right. There's, I'm trying not to parrot your words. There's a somewhat an emotionalism. I find, as an example, let's use Jordan Peterson as an example. Someone who just will. I'm not saying that he cries at the drop of a hat. He's crying too often, and too much. I think too much emotionalism. And I find that they will buy into typically will buy into very unfounded new age ideas, groups, like you say, things like homeopathy and such like that, and they can't justify why it works. Oh, it just works, so to speak. And that the evidence they would give would be, they would say, oh, it's vicarious. Oh, I have vicarious proof, right? And that doesn't really, that isn't really enough for me. So.
Yeah, I try not to emphasize that too much, that they believe anything, at least not anymore. But I go more with the kind of stream of consciousness, expansive fantasy thing, because some fiduciams are kind of skeptical as well.
Right.
But I guess I think that with Urbanum in the configuration, then they tend to be more skeptical, but they can be skeptical. I mean, it depends on what it is. If you look at Jordan Peterson, for example, he is skeptical against certain things, but more open and less critical of other things.
So, would you say that they are skeptical to support ideas that have already, we can say, ideas that are at the foundation of their worldview, their personality, right? Or does that come afterwards?
That they are skeptical towards. I think that they are skeptical towards things that kind of they tend to be non-conventional. So things that get in the way of openness that goes against exploration or kind of freedom, something that threatens to bring back a kind of dogmatism, for example. I think that might be something that they are very critical towards. But I guess what they tend to be open towards are things that they are very interested in, like they like to follow their imagination and like to believe in possibilities, and that's why.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of excessive open-mindedness rather than them simply being naive, if that makes sense.
So and they're entertaining possibilities. So I mean, I don't know whether it's. I would imagine it may be an individual thing, but are they more positive or negative possibilities typically? Is there typical? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I think it can depend. I think they can be aware of very negative possibilities as well, which they are trying to avoid. And I guess that can bring in the skepticism and criticality and sort of warnings that sort of Jordan Peterson and Greta Thunberg and people like that are kind of railing against.
Yes, I mean some of their warnings. I don't know whether this is because they are media people, and naturally we hear what has been recorded, what is popular. But it's almost like the likes of Peterson and Thunberg have their warnings have an almost mantra like quality. That we can very easily remember their warnings.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, how did you find my content?
Now, I'll have to think about that, and I'll try not to think for too long.
I think it was back in 2020 I first saw one of your comments.
Now, it may be when I was looking for videos based on another typology by Michael Pierce. Your way of presenting the videos, it is obviously not a copy, but quite similar. The structure is quite similar. So I wonder if YouTube was actually, in its algorithm, got the two of you confused. Somehow, or a similar viewership. I may have been looking for those. It may be socionics. I mean, I'm not going to describe what that is. People can do that themselves, okay? Socionics discussions. Or it could be something completely different. And I just found human types.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, one of your first comments was on one of my human types videos, so I think that makes sense. What was his name? Michael Pierce.
That's right, yeah.
Right, I'll see if I can find.
Actually, but I would say he's quite excellent. As
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so the first comment on yours I saw was one on one of my on those videos. I think it may even have been the abstractum video. I don't remember what you wrote, but you imply that you identified with abstractum as your type. But I could only find one video on your channel at the time, which had very poor lighting, so I couldn't really see your face. But the sort of softness of your voice made me think that, yeah, you are probably an abstractum type. Later on, I saw more videos, and since Fiduciam tends to have more rectangular faces, and yours was very round and a bit more childlike, I kept thinking you might be abstractum. But there were some things that made me consider Fiduciam as a possibility, even before I got the chance to ask you the relevant questions by email. You tended to talk both in your videos and in your YouTube comments in a stream of consciousness way that I first described as scatterbrained. You didn't like that term.
No, I don't. I don't consider myself scatterbrained. Really, it's more that I'm not articulating correctly. Right. So the way I articulate is scatterbrained, yes, but I'm not scatterbrained. So I didn't take it personally.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Sometimes I don't really know the precise meaning of every English word. I mean, scatterbrained is something that I imagine could be someone who is talking in a way where you have difficulty following what they are saying, jumping from one thing to the next.
So the funny thing is with these we say idioms is at times I haven't thought about what they mean. So you will hear this phrase, "Oh, it's not my cup of tea," and throughout my whole life, I never considered the actual meaning of it. That people think they like the tea that they made themselves. I just never thought about it. It's just like something that it's like something that's so common that it doesn't you don't really think about it, right? So as you mentioned scatterbrains, I think that your understanding of it is better than than the average person. It is like that. It's like you have all these thoughts, and you like a handful of pieces of paper with ideas on them, and you throw them up in the air. So yeah, it's actually quite an apt way of thinking of it. Yeah.
And let's see here. Yeah, and you mentioned something about having a long consultation with someone who did not offer you a penny for your tarot consultation.
Oh, the tarot thing. Yes. So I wonder if I should have mentioned that, because the money thing, I didn't ask for money, but I wanted to. I initially offered to give these free tarot readings, so my name would get known, and I would actually be able to do it as a business. So when this, I believe it was a South African lady, talked to me, and later on she told me how a friend of hers, or somebody, an acquaintance, works as a tarot reader and is pretty rich, and she advised me that I should take it up, that I was the real deal. Whether or not that's true, I don't know, but I'll take her word for it. So she later admitted in a rather subtle way that she was exceedingly rich. So I felt rather shortchanged that she didn't offer any kind of, not even a token payment for my work. Yeah. So if you consider the fact, yeah. Sorry, go on.
yeah, but it was sort of the whole tarot consultation thing that did not sound like abstractum either, sort of, and also having a long consultation with someone. And that's you were consulting them or they consulting you?
The way it was that you could say I was consulting them in as much as I was giving them advice. So the length of the call was as long as I wanted. That's another thing. I really enjoyed talking with this person. So she has very interesting things to say. So I believe that yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, let's move on to your what you said when we talked on email, because I asked you about your recurring patterns and struggles in life, and that's where I realized that you were Fiduciam for sure, and your secondary energies also became more apparent.
I found that question quite difficult to answer about the patterns, because I experience quite many patterns. So it's a case of what would be the main thread, so to speak, right?
Yeah, but it is kind of what I'm trying to get at with those questions, are sort of like the essence of someone's biography, in order to figure out like what they, yeah. So you said that when you were very young, you had questions about everything one could imagine. And abstractums are also curious of things, but not nearly as curious as Fiduciam. I can't recall being very curious as a child, even though I sometimes asked my parents questions about things.
The question that I had, I'm not asking you, was, when I think back, how much was the motivation behind the questions, Now, excuse me if I'm asking a question that is sort of, it's a hypothetical question. Was my questioning because of a threat, something I wanted to understand and counteract, or was it pure curiosity? I don't know. It may be a mixture of both, because there's some very much that I find interesting. And I didn't mention this. Can be quite macabre, gruesome things like torture equipment, electric chairs, electrical transformers, that things that power houses that could kill people. I found those things fascinating, and I still do somewhat. But there's also this underlying those things. There's a threat, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because based on your answers, and we will get to that, you seem to have corpus and misericordam in your configuration. And I also brought up, what's his name? Colin Wilson, the English author, Colin Wilson, as an example that might have that configuration.
Now that's
And you,
very curious. Yes, very
and you
curious.
said it was like looking in a mirror or something.
Right. That is a very, what's the word I'm looking for? A very apt analysis, because I know I can see the corpus energy in myself, as in with Colin Wilson. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was also interested in some macabre things, or I think he was interested in like murders or something like that.
The thing about Colin Wilson is it's not what he is interested in, it's what he isn't interested in. He had this massive library, like
Yeah,
its own section on UFOs. He's written books. Excuse me if you know about this, because it's not as well known. He has written scientific or investigative works into the paranormal. So he's a believer, so to speak, and so he knew he had not just a depth of knowledge in one field. It was more like breadth, right?
yeah. And he was one of those persons. At first, I didn't know how much he had written, but I thought he might be an abstractum because he had a bit more of those macabre interests, and he wrote a book called The Outsider, which was one of the ways I found him. And I thought, if someone feels like an outsider, it is probably
Oh
a
yeah.
abstractum. But then the more I found out and how much he believed in stuff, yeah, he definitely turned out to be a fiduciam. The more
It's
information you
belief.
have, the more easier it is to type someone. But yeah, at first it was kind of hard.
Right. So the more faith you have, yeah. So it is just, so you would say it is just belief in his case, or is it?
Yeah, no, I think he was curious and open-minded and exploratory. And I mean, there are things that are not known that are possible. I mean, I don't know, they could be UFOs or stuff like that, paranormal. I mean, there is something about that strange synchronicity thing with. I know I read something that it was just weird.
Right.
Just a couple of years before the Titanic sank, there was like someone wrote a story that was like almost identical or something like that. I can't remember it right now, but
Oh my
there are many
goodness.
strange coincidences like that.
Now, funny. I very vaguely remember that. Yeah. And wasn't there some part of it? Part of the story was that there were two Titanics, or two similar ships.
I can't remember
Mm.
exactly.
I will avoid the topic of UFOs, but my goodness, I don't know what they are. That's all we can say. But should we say, should we say that I've seen what you would call UFOs, but I don't know what they are. And yeah. enough to be very interested in them, but I don't particularly have much faith in people who claim to know what they are, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
They've got something to sell.
Yeah, and going back to your recurring tendencies, you also said that you've been fearful your whole life with vivid, you mentioned this, vivid recurring night terrors, including fears of environmental destruction and other looming threats like nuclear war.
Yeah.
And like I brought up, this is something I've noticed with Fiduciams who have Misericordam in their configuration, such as Jordan B. Peterson, Greta Thunberg, and also Ashkan, who I interviewed previously in a conversation on my channel.
Yes, I watched the interview with is it Ashkan? Ashkan. Yeah.
Yeah, there can be a recurring concern with looming threats, which I have yet to come across as an issue in abstractum type. So that's why I also thought that, yeah, you seem to be Fiduciam.
We could say that we could almost say that is the main thread, and it's really has been a terrible thing. It has it has in a way directed so much of my life in very peculiar ways. So I mean, I became interested in the idea of working on the radio. So on the surface, people would think, oh, he wants to do it because he wants to. It's like he wants to perform. He wants the attention. But if you think about the job of being a radio presenter, you have these sort of control panels, and you're in this tiny little room. You're sort of shielded from all kinds of threats. It may be only psychologically. So you have all this power, but at the same time, you're in this sort of James Bond villain type capsule. That's what it was. It seemed like a good job. Yeah. And what else? Yeah, it's. But so the reverse side of it is that I will challenge the threats. So if friends tell me, "Oh, don't climb that mountain," I will do it. So it's dangerous, so I'll do it.
Yeah, you also mentioned something about doing boxing.
Oh, boxing, right?
How
Yeah.
did you get an interest in boxing? I wouldn't think a Fiduciam with this configuration would be doing something like that.
Well, funny thing is that one of the things that sold me on boxing was I've done quite a few different I've done a few different martial arts. Now you consider the fact that martial arts that they are there's something quite defensive about them. A friend of mine showed me the defensive aspects of boxing, and I was just blown away. This Western martial art is very effective at teaching people really effective skills very quickly. So I took a couple of classes, and during the first two classes, I was put under such exertion that I almost puked. I actually, based on the average person who starts boxing at that club, it's not all boxing clubs, it's that one, because they are pugilist teachers at that boxing club that I'm not going to mention. I started to feel the health benefits. I felt completely transformed after 3 sessions. So I kept it up.
For how long?
More than 2 years.
Oh.
And by the way, for about sometimes I would do 2 training passes at a time. So it would be the so-called sort of intermediate and then the advanced. So the advanced wasn't actually as hard as the intermediate, strangely. I just when I got into it, it's like when I got into the swing of it. When I get moving physically, even when it's doing a job like a really heavy cleaning job, you'd imagine that at the end of the day, the person I would just wind down and want to go to sleep. I just get really pumped and I want to do more of it. I don't understand it. It's potentially harmful, but that's how I work.
Interesting.
The opposite side is the opposite side is generally being sort of sedentary and not moving very much. I can sit for an unbelievable length of time, but getting the body moving every day. If I don't do it every day or every couple of days, I will feel awful, extremely depressed. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned periods of paranoia in relation to being depressed and having quite brutally negative opinions of yourself.
The funny thing is, the worst paranoia, I didn't know that it was that I was depressed. Okay, it was kind of like obsessions, and yeah, the bad opinions of myself. Yeah, that I don't know what to say about it. It usually follows it's along the lines of it's exceedingly critical. So there's this measure of the correct or the functioning human being. What is correct? What is not correct? Okay, I don't fit into a quality a mental checklist of quality control. Not productive as I want to be. It's a brilliant question, but it's very hard to answer. That's almost like a mistake. I view myself as a mistake, biological, social, circumstantial, and similarly, as not more harsher, but similarly harsh. I view, especially in that state, I will view society. I'm trying not to. I'm trying to get away from that now. But there is this sort of rigid measure of people. Just
that sounds almost a little bit like Magnitudinem, which someone might interpret. But I think that Misericordem is similar in that respect. So I think that's what makes that.
That's very. That's interesting. And they would, the magnitude. How do you pronounce it? Magnitudinem would, yeah. I feel very uncomfortable talking about that measurement. You know, it's rather a certain opinions that I think are stupid. I know are stupid, but they have been written into me. Okay, so it's up to me to counteract them, or experience will do that, right? Yeah.
You also mentioned having obsessive interests and deep, almost religious interest in certain franchises or cultures.
Yeah. What can I say about it? When when I'm interested in something, I just want to learn everything about it. And when I was a lot younger, I in a way believed the things were real. That somehow, on some level, the author was inspired by a story or similar that happened in the ancient past. That he was expressing something that is real. which they are expressing something that is real, but I mean real as in historical. Right.
Yeah, I think that abstractum and almost any type can be obsessive about certain things, but the way you phrased it made it seem like it was a bit more fits Fiduciam probably a bit more.
It was rather sort of, you say, all encompassing. So it'll be a certain cartoon that was made in France, or it was a cartoon about the Three Musketeers, and so I wanted to learn everything about France. I wanted to be French. I actually had this idea that in the past life I may have been French. It's you know, it fits the definition of obsession, right? So, and to the point where it annoyed my family, and it's sort of when an interest becomes antisocial, right? Let's say younger. I mean, very, very much younger. So at the age of sort of 9 or 10, that sort of age, right?
Another thing that pointed away from abstractum was that you were a happy, smiley child. You liked singing and performing song routines that you saw.
Right. Now I have a very vague memory of it. Yeah.
Your parents told you, perhaps?
They told me. I've seen photos. I can, I can measure. I can see photos on the timeline, and after a certain point, not smiling, not really happy. Yeah. That's because I had an unfortunate, very unpleasant school life. I had teachers that were awful to me at a very young age, and but I remember singing to things. It's also part of being obsessed by certain cartoons or whatever it would be.
Yeah.
But I was very happy. I really enjoyed it, and I was, according to my parents, the way they describe it, they said that I was. They said, "Oh, you used to be what we would call extrovert." Right. So when I heard that, I was quite surprised because didn't associate. I had rather bad, quite a incorrect view of what an extroversion is. I thought, wow, that doesn't sound like me at all. But they obviously saw that, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the whole verbal thing. I think that what really seems to distinguish Fiduciam and abstractum is that Fiduciam is more verbal and enjoys talking, while abstractum prefers to talk as little as possible, if at all. So when you mentioned that you have endless energy when it comes to talking to people, and that your conversations are rarely shorter than 3 hours.
Yes, thanks for reminding me about that. Yeah.
That also.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting you.
No,
there may be endless,
confirmed.
maybe some limits to the energy, but it's a lot of energy for it. Yeah.
Because it's interesting now that I'm talking to you, you do seem to struggle similarly to abstractum in getting the right words. So some Fiduciam are very good at, rhetoric and, speaking and debating.
That's very, very accurate. I really do. Yeah. I very often find it hard to find the right words.
But you enjoy talking.
I do. A great deal. Yeah.
That's interesting. Because I guess I am sometimes good at getting the right words. I mean, especially if I practice. But even so, even the more I practice, even the more I get used to talking like this, it's still there's something that just like there's a hurdle to get over, and then I just, as soon as I'm kind of relieved whenever I can stop talking. I think you can perhaps see that sometimes when I get the last words out, I'm just glad to.
Yes, you had, but you had I'm not sure whether you cut it, but you had a little bit, a very, very short period of this video. You got one word in, you know, people read an introduction, right? But when you accelerated, you got in the mode of talking. It's rather like a chain and a process.
Yeah.
And the words they're not peripheral, they're very functional. It's not, you aren't speaking in a, I'm not saying it isn't spontaneous, but rather it's almost
It's with an aim in mind. It's with an aim in mind, perhaps.
Right, it's volitional. It's motivated. It's almost not consciously motivated, or you could say unconsciously motivated. Unconsciously. Or would you say it's true or not? I don't know.
No, well, yeah, no, but I experienced that I want to get certain specific thing out, and then I focus, like I try to think of that which I feel I need to say, and then I often speed up, like you noticed, and then I tend to talk very fast just to get it out, so that I don't know why, because sometimes perhaps I have described abstractum as talking slow. I'm not sure they talk slow necessarily, but they can behave a bit slow. But in my case, I would say that I have noticed when I've listened to myself, especially in interviews, that I tend to talk very fast because I like to, I have an aim in mind in what I want to say, and I want to get it out fast, so I can stop talking or something like that.
It's a dynamic. It's a dynamic communication style, perhaps.
I'm not sure. Like right now, I kind of, I want to like get back to interviewing you since we got off track.
Yeah.
So, I guess it's very sort of, I tend to, there may be a kind of a similarity with Urbanum, who also like to follow a certain formula, or whatever you would say.
Yeah.
I'm not really that into formula, but I do like to I do have an aim very often. I find it hard to just wing things.
Right.
But anyway, let's see. And the last thing you said about recurring patterns, what you learn just enough to understand something and then you move on.
Okay. So are we? Sorry, are we going to talk further about the patterns, or are we moving on from that?
Well, that was the last part. I mean, the next part is about the struggles. We can go in a bit. You mentioned about difficulty in school and with your teachers. You said that your classmates also didn't like you for some reason, and you were an outcast.
Yeah, it's very troubling. Yeah.
And you said that this was around the age of 5 to 6. But did you go to school that early? Was it preschool?
Well, actually, the British school system, that's when you start sort of what you'd call primary school. I suppose you would say preschool. It's a mixture of play and being taught to read. It will sound very young to people, almost like being pulled from the womb and being shoved in a classroom. And that's what it was like. It was, even if you disregard. I had my first teacher was terrifying. Shouted at people and said to me, "Oh, you slow coach," sort of implied I was stupid. which is not the best thing for a 5 or 6-year-old to hear. So it was, as I remember it, it was like being in a school in a Soviet country. I was sort of isolated. The not all, but the classmates had their own way, and they sort of rejected me. They didn't want to have much to do with me, and I don't know why. And if I did, I wish that it could have been different, but it wasn't. So well, that's life is shit sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I have noticed sometimes that when I have noticed people get annoyed with fiduciams, it has often been because fiduciams talk a lot without really listening to others. Well, there's a bit of this kind of autistic tendency to just talk about what they themselves are interested in, like out loudly, and then other people just get tired of listening to it or things like that. Yeah,
I find it's very bad. I find I'm not going to mention their name, but there's a certain person of that energy type, and it is too much of. There's not one track. Their way of communicating is changing direction all the time. I want them to say, "Can you please just keep to the point?" It irritates me. Yeah. So, and I don't like personally my habit of not asking questions. And I find myself interrupting people. It seems very rude. I don't know why I do it. I don't want to do it. Yeah.
But you don't think that was the reason why people didn't like you?
Oh my goodness. It was so long ago.
Yeah.
I honestly don't remember. I would probably say that a part of it was. It's no, I would say isn't an autistic trait because I wasn't interested. Excuse me. I wasn't interested in objects. I was interested in the people around me who just didn't want anything to do with me. They were quite hostile. But I would say, very curious, that the habit of not asking questions and sort of, say, giving a clear invitation to people could possibly have been something they found strange. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, you also mentioned some other things that you disliked about people, like you brought up people who tell dramatic stories about tragic events to arouse an emotional reaction.
Right. It's like when people bring up something, they bring up death or ideas, stories about sickness with complete strangers. Just a couple of weeks ago, somebody felt, he had to tell me about his wife dying, and to me personally, I don't think it's correct. It's trying to get, it's not honest the way when I mention how people do this, it isn't that they need to tell others. It's rather they're doing it to create a kind of drama. And I don't like it. And I find it quite manipulative. Yeah.
Yeah. And people who religiously follow trends and people with a particular type of closed-mindedness.
Yeah, it's a black and white thinking. It's these, like somebody, I was at a pub and this man said, I brought up something, and he said, he asked me, he asked, oh, you're not one of those conspiracy theorists, are you? And I want to say, yes, I am. I'm proud of it. I believe in certain conspiracy theories. So it's like, oh, all of them, they must be stupid, or they must be ill-informed. Or the opposite, you see what I mean? It's all of those people are like that. They don't know anything else apart from this, that kind of view.
Yeah, lack of nuance.
It's not nuanced. So another thing is this actually something that people would sort of presume things like, you won't have heard, you won't have heard that type of music. Oh, you probably XXXX do this, right?
Yeah.
I don't like it.
And you also said that you can't stand noisy, frantic behavior.
Right, no, or sort of a kind of unpredictable way as well. Yeah,
Silly and childish, you mentioned.
yeah, that's right. I mean, I was trying to think of an example, but I might not come up with it.
But
Yeah,
is it just that you kind of cringe at it, or do you feel nervous about it, or what is the kind of...
it's two things at once. I don't think it's correct behavior. It's like an adult shouldn't behave like that, right? And it almost makes me wonder, what might they do? It's not that they're on drugs, right? But it's almost like the psychological equivalent of somebody who's taken far too much coke or something. And you're looking at them, their weird behavior, and you're wondering, what are they going to do? No, I'm not going to stay here and wait to find out what they're going to do. I want them to, get away from me.
So it is a bit of uneasiness, kind of.
Yeah, it's. I don't like. You say on the other side. I know this is a little controversial. I don't. I feel rather uncomfortable in the presence of people who show too clear signs of being exceedingly mentally disturbed. I want to keep. I'll talk. I will talk with them, but I want to sort of keep a distance, right? Especially if they show sort of signs they might turn aggressive as well, which is probably probably quite normal that most people don't want that, right?
Yeah. Okay. So we haven't talked much about the corpus thing, or but one thing
Right.
that sounded like corpus was when you said that you start to put time and effort into something when someone asks you to do something for them or with them when you get a
Right.
commission. So
So
it's
I
like,
take it that's
are you?
corpus thing.
It sounded like you get a bit of motivation when you do it for someone or with someone rather than just...
It is like that. It's rather, part of it is somebody's watching over me. I have to. I have a sort of deadline, and there's a tangible goal. I don't mean necessarily money. That okay, this stage will be reached, and we believe that you can reach this stage. And so it's rather like that.
So it's more that someone else is like pushing you on, or is it that you like to do it for them?
It's rather that I see it in the future in a way. I see that this is a very clear line, and it's going to result in this. I've never thought about it like this, right? But as you ask that question, I sense that this is the start of the process, and there's an actual end to the process. That can be that someone says they'll give me money. The most peculiar thing, now this might contradict other stuff that you've, I don't know, the conclusions. I sometimes wonder what I would be prepared to do when it comes to a project, when it comes to the moral moral limitations, I don't know, or amorality, I don't know. I do wonder. I do wonder. I don't think I would do anything too terrible. But I also wonder, given the opportunity, if there's an opportunity I cannot lose, what I might do. I just wonder. There's something for you to work with.
Yeah,
don't
we have
know.
been talking for an hour now, so we should probably stop soon. But there are a few more questions that I want to take the opportunity to ask.
Right.
Yeah, speaking of corpus, you also said that you derive a great spiritual reward from helping others, and had to create a contract slash clause. Otherwise, you will be giving teaching and other services for free.
Yeah. The contract and clause thing, that's really hard. I'm really being hard. It's really almost a hard-hearted thing. I actually ended a friendship with somebody because he asked me to do something that wasn't in the contract. He expressed it like, "Oh, could you do this as a token of our friendship?" Which I thought that is very manipulative, a very manipulative thing to say. And I said, "No, go away." so I don't like it. I don't like that kind of emotionalism and that kind of thing. But the spiritual reward, unfortunately, I can't describe it. It's a very sustained thing. It's something that doesn't go away for hours or days. And as you said, I experienced it teaching. I've experienced it also when I did something. I've worked at stables as well. I felt it then. I don't know if I don't believe the two things are connected. The one is more metaphysical. The thing about the contracts is more like checks, a thing called checks and balances, right? So I'm not going to, I can't, I will be able to say that I haven't deviated from this, excuse me, this law. I won't deviate from it, so you don't, right? Does it make sense?
But is the law there to prevent you from getting exploited, or is it just some other?
It's both. It's firstly is I don't want I don't want to exploit others as much as I don't want to be exploited. I want a way to show that, well, I'm doing this and I'm being hard, really hard. This is a hard rule saying you cannot exploit me. It's almost like I'll have this thing, this contract to show them so they can't say to me, "Oh, you just invented that rule." I say, "These are the rules. They can't be broken." So I stick to it, and
Yeah. Are these rules based on some past experience, or?
They are past experience, and also also something. Excuse me. Also something. I did. I'm not a university graduate, which may or may not come across, but I did study at university, and one of the things I studied design. They were hot on getting a Creative Commons or copyright. What's the word? It's the contract to show who can use your work and how it can be used. They told me how they got abused. So I've had that with me since I was about 20 something. That you must keep an eye out, otherwise people will use your stuff. And that, similarly, I'm not going to use. If I use a piece of music, I'll mention, I use this, right? That kind of thing.
Okay. And one final thing here, you also said that lately you have problem valuing your own creative work, and you also run out of steam. And that might be confused with abstractum. So it's interesting hearing a Fiduciam struggle with something similar.
I see it as of mediocre quality at times. And there's a thing about the goal. I cannot see it being used for anything. I don't imagine that there will be an audience for it. I just get plagued with doubts. At times I will be plagued with doubts a month after doing work on a project. Then 2 months later, I'll look back on it and I'll say, well, that was actually worth investing in. Lately, my average estimation of the artwork I create is some of it is great. The majority is pretty mediocre. And that's also the impression other people give me. So, unfortunately.
What about your family? You're married and have kids, or
I'm not married, no.
you're not married? But did you have kids?
No, I never had kids. No, I had pupils, but I didn't have kids.
Okay,
No.
I thought I think it was a video where you said that you did something with your family, and then there were kids in the video. Perhaps there were sibling.
Right, my family. That's probably my parents, or very occasionally my uncles and aunts. Yeah, that's what I meant. I also refer to sort of, I had a fiance and ex-fiance, and I still have contact with her parents, and I actually would, in a way, I refer to them as my family. They became like adoptive parents. Strangely, Swedish adoptive parents.
Yeah,
Second
yeah, she was
house.
Swedish, and you moved to Sweden.
Yeah. So I've got two. Yeah.
Well, when you live that far away from your own parents, I guess it feels it makes sense that it would feel a bit like your partner's parents are like adopting you a bit.
So one of them, thing is, really, it was on their side. One of them was a colleague, and she really took care of me. She understood that, oh, okay, he's on his own. And I'm very sorry to say that I'm not going to go on about this too much. I don't get on with my own parents very well. They make me feel under a lot of stress and quite yeah, unhappy and not quite myself around them. So which is quite a sad note to end on, but that's how it is. Yeah.
Are they different from you? Like they are different types?
They're quite different. That what happens is more when they are a combination of the two. They become like this tag team of stress. Individually, they can be all right, but together they're like this two-headed monster in a way. I just feel even if they don't even when they don't attack me, I feel just very awkward. Yeah, right. That's how it is. So I don't want people to think that is typical of English parenting, but in my case, that is how it has become over the years. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for having this conversation with me. I think we have covered the most important things.
Oh yeah, thank you too. I've certainly learned, even though you may feel as though you're repeating certain things. I certainly learned things in this conversation.
Well, this was mainly for like an audience. That's
Yeah.
why, it's gonna feel a bit like we're repeating things that we have already talked about in our email conversations.
But I say that, of course. But if at any time you wish to have sort of discussion where it's not all about the fiducium, or it's more you wish someone else can uncover things about you, I would try to do that, because it has been very one-sided. It's just a suggestion.
What did you mean?
I know, but if you ever, I'll express this another way. If you ever wish to have a follow-up discussion on anything else, I would be happy to do so.
Okay. Thank you. But we can continue speaking. I'll just stop the recording for the audience here.
Yeah, it's good. That's. I think that's for the best. So I'll carry on for much longer.